So we will, I think many of the topics I'm going to cover has been touched on by Iris and Mylene and other speakers. And it's really heartening to see that wellness, well-being for seafarers is catching on. Sailor Society has looked into the well-being and wellness of seafarers for the last 6 years as we change our programs and we take into consideration the changes in the seafaring community. Sorry. Oops. Okay, what did I do? Okay, sorry about that. So we will address the safety and welfare of seafarers, but focusing on a particular topic that is quite hot nowadays. Hang on. On the right or on the left? Ah, okay. Sorry about that. So we have to embrace technology, huh? Right. I think all the speakers, when they talk about the well-being and safety of seafarers, it's not easy because as long as there's human, there will always be error. So we can never be 100% error-prone. But we believe that there is a connection between the well-being of a person and the way that the person is able to perform his or her job. I think, as you know, over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been much attention given to the various aspects of seafarer well-being, from nutrition to fatigue to other soft skills that are required by seafarers. So now, the hot topic in the last 12 to 15 months has been mental illness and suicide. This is likely due to more exposure given by many governments around the world, and as well as the extensive use of social media nowadays. So, in the current situation, and I'm giving you some statistics, hopefully that we can use this for further discussion after our talks, is this. In a survey conducted by Yale University that was concluded in the early 2018, they found that 26% of 1,000 seafarers surveyed felt depressed, down, or hopeless. Out of this, 45% or 117 seafarers did not ask anyone for help on board ship or on shore. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who feels depressed will commit suicide. It's not like that, okay? Everybody feels down, depressed at a certain point in time. But suicide accounts for 6% of seafarer deaths. And this could significantly be more if we include suspicious disappearances. For comparison, 1% of deaths in the UK in 2017 were recorded as suicide. Every country has got its own set of suicide statistics. I come from Singapore, and I'm going to use statistics given by the Samaritans of Singapore. There were 398 cases of suicide in 2018. This is out of a population of about 5.5 million people. Suicide is a leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 29 years. This is quite interesting to me because in the last 1 year, as part of our work in Sailor Society, we find that when we come across suicide cases, confirmed suicide cases, we have not seen anyone above the age of 35 committing suicide. They've been young, very young. There are 2.8 times more deaths from suicide than transportation deaths. So for every one person that's killed by a car, actually 2.8 people have committed suicide. 71% of suicide deaths were males. We thought that, the ladies would be more prone to suicide. In Singapore, that's not the case. Males are more prone to suicide. And there are 6 survivors for every suicide death, meaning the number of people that actually attempted suicide is very much higher than the 398 deaths that I mentioned. So how about Philippines? Philippines is a little bit different. The last statistics I've got was 2013. There were 1.8 males per 100,000 that committed suicide. And it's lower than the females, which came in at 2.7 females per 100,000. Oops. Okay. So we know there are various triggers, right, to suicide: long working hours, isolation. All this we know, and I'm not going to delve too much into it. But above that, there are certain risk factors. Risk factors were like previous attempts of suicide, family history of suicide, mental health conditions, serious chronic health issues, distressing life events, prolonged stress factors. I think for seafarers, many of it are prolonged stress factors. We have some case studies or story here. This was a case of a distressing life event where the mother passed away and he could not cope. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip very quickly through this. And even a ship captain, some of the things that we do in our program is to help seafarers identify possible signs of mental health issues cropping up. And one of it is this total disinterest in anything around him. I'm going to play you a video now of Captain Dan Thompson as he tells us more about his journey.
It was probably about 5 or 6 years into my career. You tend to deny what's going on, but I knew something wasn't quite right. Depression and anxiety itself is a crippling illness, really. At the time, I was working as a navigation officer. I'd say I was struggling to perform to a reasonable standard. I felt when this came around for me, the support and the environment wasn't there to speak openly about mental health issues. The mentality is, just toughen up, get through it. But when you're dealing with a mental illness, that's not an option. The maritime industry itself is a very high pressured industry, so it's very easy for people to start getting affected. And it's not like the 9 to 5 where as soon as you go home you close the door, whereas on a ship you're monitored 24 hours a day. So it's a lot of mental pressure to stay under for that amount of time, knowing that you're being observed all the time. And I think it's safe to say that it's not just me, but there's a significant amount of people out there probably on the same ships as me that were struggling in the same way. Although I've got the support that I needed, it certainly took a lot longer than it should have done. There was never a mention of assistance in terms of mental health services, because it's not something that was at the time available. From my perspective, the Not On My Watch campaign is critical actually to starting to push this forward, get people talking and changing the view of mental health within the maritime industry. And we've got a long way to go, but I think the best starting point is education and training. It's so important that we start this now to ensure that other people in a similar position to me don't go through the same experiences that I did.
So there was Captain Dan Thompson. It's a very real issue. It doesn't matter what your rank or position is, either onshore or on the ship. Everyone is prone to a possibility of suffering from some kind of mental health issues. Right? Civil society, we have a crisis response network of trained counselors. Many of them are actually ordained ministers, and they are able to provide immediate counseling services to seafarers and their families should they need so. So how do we tackle this problem? The various aspects of a person's well-being. We do this through a holistic approach, and I think I'm very happy to hear many shipping companies talking about holistic approach, and I think that's the way to go, because no one element is more important than the other. We look at just like the wheel in the logo, Wellness at Sea, it's a social, emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual. When we conduct our training, our intervention, we also look at the spiritual part of it. It's not what religion you are, but I think it's a person's belief system. And it's this belief system that will build up a person's resiliency in times of trouble. And we all will go through times of trouble and some distressing life events. So, Wellness at Sea is a classroom-based program. It touches on the 5 elements. It takes about 3 days. We are running one tomorrow in Iloilo, actually for FAME and JMG. But having it in the classroom is just not good enough. I think someone just said earlier that we need to keep emphasizing. I think it was John, right? We have to keep emphasizing. So we want to put this into the seafarers' hands. And the way to do that, simple way for us, we develop an application called the Wellness app. And the seafarer can then use this app, go through the 5 elements of the wellness, well-being. We have about 16,000 seafarers using it right now. He takes it into his own hands. He runs it every day. He looks at what areas he needs to brush up on. And this is one way that we know of that can help a seafarer in his journey of well-being. So I look forward to some spirited discussion after this. And thank you very much for your attention and time.